Well, good evening. It is 5 o'clock and it is time for the Whangarei Seventh-day Adventist Church live stream event. So glad you've chosen to join us. It's great to have you with us. If you are watching right now, Facebook or YouTube, wherever you might be, use that comment section. We'd love to hear whereabouts you are, whether you're spread across New Zealand, maybe even somewhere a little bit international. And I've got something echoing in the background. There we go. Fix that. So welcome to our live stream this evening. We will be very, very blessed in just a few moments when we start to talk with Pr Karyn Newson from the Papatoetoe Seventh-day Adventist Church in Auckland. And she's going to share some really, really great insights with us, some creative thinking as they've sought to engage their local community. Before I do that, my usual spiel, hey, if you want to find us on YouTube, best way to do that is just to type in Whangarei Seventh-day Adventist Church in the search bar. It'll come up straight away. Don't forget to do that awesome stuff that tells the YouTube algorithm that we are worth sharing with the population. Subscribe, like, share, and yes, use that comment section. And you'll also find us on Facebook and, of course, on Instagram as well. If you're looking for short and sweet inspirational ideas and spiritual stimulation, be sure to visit that Instagram location. So, without any further ado, it is my privilege to introduce you to a colleague and a friend of mine. Karyn, great to have you with us tonight. Thank you for making the time to join us. How are you? Oh, sorry, I've got you on mute. Oh, there you go. Try that again.
Awesome. Hey, thanks for having me, Adrian. I'm doing great, thanks.
Awesome, awesome. Now, tell us a little bit about you, Karyn. You are married, children, all that good stuff?
Yeah, I am. We are coming up to 29 years married. I have 2 adult girls, both nurses, one with animals and one with humans, and they both think the opposite option is not fun at all, so they should stick to the species that they nurse. And my eldest daughter got married 2 years ago. She's just had her 2nd wedding anniversary, and so he has brought some beautiful Tongan flavour to our family, and they currently are living with us, desperately saving for a house. So nice. Yeah, we're one big melting pot.
Fantastic, fantastic. Now, the interesting thing about where you're pastoring at the moment is you actually grew up in that community, didn't you?
Yeah, I did. I was born in South Auckland, and I was born into my local community church. My mum was actually born into my local community church.
Wow.
So I have gone to the same church my whole life, and I have lived nowhere but South Auckland. So South Auckland gets a pretty bad rap, I think, a lot of the time, but I love her. She is beautiful.
Love it, fantastic. I mean, that is a unique experience to be able to minister right now in your current capacity in the very community that you grew up and no doubt have been serving in different capacities over the years.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I certainly never thought that this was part of the trajectory of my life, but it is such a gift. I am deeply passionate about my faith community and my local community. And so, yeah, it really is a gift.
Now, on that note, your congregation has gone on quite a journey, and that's really what we want to talk about this evening. So what are some of the amazing things that you've done over the years, presently are doing, to as a local church, to actually impact the community roundabout and make a difference in people's lives? Why don't you just launch right into that? Tell us some great stories, give us some ideas. Maybe it'll stimulate our own thinking in whatever churches we're from, to be able to do something similar.
Yeah, sure. I mean, we've done all sorts of things over the years, but I guess probably in the last 5 to 10 years, we've really, I feel like, stepped deeper into our local community. And we have done all sorts of community initiatives. You know, I think of Playgroup. Playgroup we have run for decades now, every Wednesday morning for the preschoolers in our community. We have run Welcome Baby for several years now. That is an ADRA initiative. That is a clothing library for your newborn to 1-year-olds. We have turned our storage sheds out the back into a local gym. That is a pay what you can arrangement, and that too has been running for several years now. We have Solid Community, that was an initiative birthed out of one man and his heart to change his community in Clendon. And so that too has been running for 10 plus years and has expanded to 3 or 4 nights a week. We started a marae for the homeless community about probably 4 or 5 years ago now. We really saw a huge need for that right in our local context. And that marae has shifted into what we call community dining. Community dining is a free meal for anyone in our community every Thursday night. And we get about 80 to 100 people that come to that every single week. We have got addiction support classes. We've got groups every week that help you learn to cook on a budget. We do parenting groups every week. We run a food bank that is a pickup service out of our car park every week. We do youth mentoring. So the local New Zealand Police and Oranga Tamariki refer either young offenders or youth at risk to us, and we do one-on-one mentoring with them. We have set up our own counselling centre that we're able to provide counselling free. We also have had a huge COVID response, I guess, and we've been really blessed to partner with lots of amazing groups of people. And so as part of that, in this current lockdown, we are helping to support, mostly with groceries, more than 800 people. And
wow.
So that is a massive, massive undertaking, and we've got some amazing partners with that. But yeah, they are, I guess, a number of the things that we are currently running in and through our community.
Wow, that's actually quite mind-blowing, to be honest. It sounds exhausting. How do you do it all, Karen?
Well, I don't do it all. That's how we do it all.
That's the secret, isn't it?
Yeah, that is the secret. I think the huge thing is, yes, we have a community champion. So we have a community pastor that runs a lot of these initiatives out at PAPSDA, but it's a great team of volunteers that we work with that have a heart for our local community. And so different people have got a heart for some of these different ministries, and they champion them. And so we as a local church just really help to support them to make their dream a reality.
Wow,
the other thing too, Adrian, is that we're big believers in partnering. We don't think that we have to reinvent the wheel on everything. We don't think that we have to come up with the programs for everything. And so for things like our addiction classes, our cooking on a budget, our parenting, they are all run by the local community or local community organisations, and then they come and use our facility. And so I guess effectively, I like to think that PAPSDA has pretty much become a little bit of a community centre, and it operates 24/7 just about.
Wow, okay, so that's interesting. That's interesting to me. All right, so how do you, I'm thinking of that community dining just as an example. You say, how many did you say come to that each Thursday?
Yeah, so between 80 and 100.
So is that like no questions asked? I mean, somebody rolls up and, somebody walks in clearly off the street, someone rolls up in a BMW, like it's just, if you're there, you're welcome to join in.
Yeah, pretty much. Yeah, it is a pay what you can.
Okay.
And a lot of our ministries are pay what you can, but it is, clearly evident if you came to a community dining that predominantly people can't afford to give a whole lot. And
Sure.
so that space, I like to think of it as our very own church plant within the building. And I know that sounds a little bit odd, but if you were to ask those people what church they go to, they would say their church is PAPSDA. And that although a few of them are starting to transition and come to our Saturday services, they see Thursday night as their church. And at that dinner, there is a huge amount of connection created. There is always a word shared. And so we share 5 or 10 minutes of the Bible, and then we share a story of life change in and through that space as well. And so we really see it as a little church, and the people that go come every week.
Yeah. So what kind of impact does this have? I mean, you guys have been on this journey, and judging by that number of ministries, a lot's happening over quite a decent amount of time, I imagine. Years probably.
Yeah. And I think, like everyone, because we're all different, you see life change happen at different stages and at different paces. And so for some people, you see radical transformation happen quickly, and for others, it's a process. And so I think of one young woman that was connected in to our community probably about 7 years ago, 7 or 8 years ago. And just one of our young people started babysitting her children, and she was in a very abusive relationship, and life was really tough. And her journey has been very slow, but she is now no longer in that abusive relationship. She's baptized. She comes to church every week. She serves in lots of different capacities, but she has just grown so much strength and courage, and her identity now has completely shifted from, I guess, being worthless to having her identity found in God now. And so I think of her, but then I also think of a family that came, and he was a massive drug dealer in South Auckland. He had always been a big dealer, and we've actually done stories about him. ADRA has done stories about him, and so you may have seen that. But his family came to PAPSDA, and they just were sold out with everything. They quickly got married. Their whole family got baptized, and they've actually moved now. They've moved to the Gold Coast, but they now run the same ministry that brought them in. So Solid Ministry brought them in, and they now run Solid on the Gold Coast and are hooked in with the Gold Coast SDA Church over there as well. So just, I could tell you story after story after story.
I love that, because the impact there isn't only that, a family of X number are now saved for the kingdom, but essentially you did what the police are trying to do, which is take drug dealers off the street, if I could put it like that, right?
Yeah.
In a sense, saving lives, in a sense, like the ripple effects of that one, breaking that chain link is not only, yes, these people are saved, but it ripples through the community in ways we don't often think of as a church, because when you redeem one family, that influence goes out. That's pretty amazing. That's incredible.
And they are reproducing what happened for them, and so it's that full cycle, and that's what I love. I love when we get to see that.
That's awesome. And I'm sure you could go on and on with lots of stories like that. I want to know why. I want to know, like, what drives this. I mean, sure, it's a good idea for churches to be involved in their local community. Ideally speaking, that's correct. But what is it for you guys? Because I'm guessing it wasn't always like this. But there's been a journey you've been on.
Yeah. And it's interesting because I think you're able to identify it more clearly when you look back, you know. And I guess we've had the opportunity over the last few years to just look back at the different seasons of leaders and what they've brought and what their influence was. And you can see God's hand in that. You can see that God brought these leaders in because they had a focus in this area, and because that area was strengthened, that then allowed this to happen, and then that leader did that, and then that allowed this to happen. And so I love that as you look back, you get to see God's hand in and through it all. But when I think about this particular journey of going deeper into our community, it goes back probably now 6 or 7 years. And Norman Hurlow was our lead pastor at that stage. And I remember sitting in an elders meeting with Norman, and he asked the question, if our church were to close its doors, would anybody notice? Would the local community notice if we weren't here? And I guess the sobering reality at that meeting was, actually, I'm not sure that they would notice, you know, not in any significant way. And I guess as a team of leaders, we decided that that wasn't okay. And that started us on this journey to think more about our impact, not just for those who attended our church, but for the people in our local community. So we did a whole bunch of research. We actually had meetings that spanned a year or so. It was a huge process. And we asked what the biggest need in our community was. And I think that was a really interesting result, I suppose, because we're in the heart of South Auckland. And with so much crime and poverty, I really thought that, you know, something to do with that or addiction or something would be the answer. But the answer was, and I think it's true for most of our communities, was loneliness. And
Okay.
I really believe that for all of us, as churches, as faith communities, it is our biggest challenge, but actually one of our greatest purposes is to create connection and belonging for people. And so much of what we do is to try to connect people in and to walk alongside people to help them, I guess, grow and change. And so, yeah, out of that birthed, I guess, our mandate for ministry, and that became Isaiah 58. And so Isaiah 58 really is, the core, the center of everything that we do. And I sent you a slide. I wonder if you want to pop it up on the screen now, but this has actually become a massive wall in our foyer. And I guess I want to draw your attention to two things. One is, of course, Isaiah 58. And I love the version there that we've got. It's from the Message. And we just pulled out certain words, but, you know, break the chains of injustice, get rid of exploitation in the workplace, free the oppressed. And the other quote that we love, and I think is central to all that we do, is the he tangata, he tangata, he tangata. It is the people, it is the people, it is the people. And, you know, I think at the core of all we do, I think at the core of Jesus' ministry was the people. And we want it to be at the core of ours. And so, yeah, that's why Isaiah 58 and these quotes and these people represent some of that for us.
Wow, that's incredible. I like that because I think that really our action should be driven by a theology. You know, theology without action is just a theory.
Yeah.
But but at the same time, everything we do must be centered in our picture of God, in
Yes.
what he calls us to. And Isaiah 58 is an incredibly challenging, confronting chapter,
Yeah.
because when you read the first few verses, and I'm going to go through it in a few minutes when we finish talking about it, but when you read the first few verses,
Yeah.
it's very clear that God is talking to religious people.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
And he's saying your religion is worthless
Yeah.
if it doesn't lead to a change of heart that's reflected in how we engage relationally with the community around us and with the people around us. So I love that. So it started with a very hard question, a very, very confronting question for you of, if you close the doors, who would really care? Who would even notice? That's a tough question to ask, because I guess church is so important to us because we see the value in it, but are other people experiencing that same value in the community? It's a tough question to have to confront.
Yeah, and it was a hard question for us. And I think one of the things with Isaiah 58 too is that, I think sometimes people excuse it away and say, yes, but that in a spiritual sense. So, free the oppressed in a spiritual sense. And I think that is very true. I think it's both and.
Absolutely.
So don't get me wrong. I think that is really, really important, but we have to do both. We have to do it in a physical sense, as well as in a spiritual sense, as well as in an emotional sense. It's loving the Lord your God with your mind, your soul, your heart. It's everything. It's your whole life.
Yeah. Now, great. I love what you guys have been doing. Love the reason why you do it. So it must have been like super easy to go on this journey, right? Like no challenges at all. Everyone just bought into it from day one. Tell us a little bit about that side of it.
Look, it's not easy. That's the cold, hard reality. It is incredibly messy. That is, I guess the word that I use to describe it a lot is messy. But you have to become somewhat comfortable with the mess. And if you know me at all, and there'll be some of you listening that don't know me terribly well, but I really don't do mess well. I'm a bit of a tidy freak. I like things neat and tidy, but I also like things very organized and ordered. So mess is not my happy place. And so if I can become comfortable with the mess, anyone can. But I think what you've got to do is just constantly keep assessing and trying to think about what works, adapt things. Just because you start it doesn't mean you have to carry it on. Just because you start it doesn't mean you have to do it the same way. Just keep assessing and evaluating and adapting it so that it fits the needs of your local community. It's remembering that challenges are worth it when you keep those stories front and center. We do this for the people. We do this so that people come and go, I've not felt like I belonged anywhere, but I really feel like God loves me and I can be who I am here and I can be accepted and not judged. It's those sorts of things. And I guess at the end of the day, we're not going to do things perfectly, and you can plan and plan and plan, and you can meet and meet and meet, try to work out how to do things the best way. But at the end of the day, we believe that Isaiah 58 says, go and do, go and be the church. And we just felt like we had no other option but to act, and that it wasn't okay anymore to have good intentions unless we were actually living that out. So yes, not easy. Have we taken everyone on the journey? Sadly, no. But I do think it's worth trying to do it slow enough that you take as many people on the journey as possible, because that's always the goal. You never want to lose people on the journey. But at the same time, you've got to do what you feel God's calling you to do.
Love it. As we come to near an end of our discussion here, Karyn, for those who are watching from other churches, what do you say in terms of the how? I mean, It sounds like a lot of money is needed. It sounds like maybe, what do you do for staffing? You mentioned volunteers. What sort of commitments involved? Like how realistically? I mean, not everyone. Papatoetoe is a fairly decent sized church community. Some of our churches are very small. Any words of wisdom, very inspiring, but now that practice of it, what would you say? Where do we start? How do we do this?
So I think a few things. I think firstly, partner with people who know how to do this well. There are lots of really great community agencies that we can partner with as a local church. Build those relationships until they trust you. That takes a great deal of time. Several years ago, the police would never have contemplated working with us with their young people or oranga tamariki. Never would they have worked with a church. But over time, they've come to trust us. So building those relationships are worth it. Partnering with people like ADRA are phenomenal. They do an amazing work. They have got great ideas. So they are a great funding opportunity for a ministry. The other thing I would say is, what can't you stand or what breaks your heart? And when somebody from your community comes to you and says, I'm so passionate about this. I really want to give my life to this. Think about how you can support that, because that might be the thing. And so many of our ministries have begun that way because one person said, I really want to see us do this, So it's investing in your volunteers and believing in them. And the other thing I would say is, don't do what we're doing. Figure out what works for you.
Yeah, I like that. Yes.
Sit in a space with a team of volunteers and leaders and go ask yourself those same questions. And ask yourself what, first of all, would anybody notice if we weren't here? Ask yourself, what is the biggest need in this community? What can we do in this local context? Because what we do doesn't work in every community. So don't do what we do. Do what fits your community and do it with God. Because it's that whole, have a dream so big that it's impossible without God. If we do any of this without God, then to me it's pointless. And so, I think partner well, partner with good people, partner with the people in your community that are passionate about stuff. Ask the hard questions and do it with God. That's what I would say. And if I could just say this quote as well, Adrian. I read the best book on leadership I've ever read a year or so ago, and it's called Leading from the In-Between. A guy named John Macaulay wrote it, and he defines leadership this way. He says, leaders are people who look at the world and say, it doesn't have to be this way, and do something about it.
Wow. Yeah.
And he says, we're all called to be the bridge for people. And that's really all we're doing and all we're wanting to do is be that bridge, to be that gap, to look at the world and go, you know what, that's not okay. And it doesn't have to be that way. But the difference is that leaders do something about it. And we're all leaders. We are all leaders of someone. We all have influence over someone. So we all have the opportunity to do that.
I love it. That's fantastic, and very practical as well. Karyn, thank you for being willing to share these incredible pearls of wisdom with us, life experiences. Just so grateful you're on our team here in the Seventh-day Adventist Church here in the North New Zealand Conference, and I love what the Papatoetoe Church is doing in its local community. It really is tremendous, and I think sets the bar quite high. And I love the fact that you've just kind of grown into it over time, just one step at a time, asked the hard questions, sensed the Lord leading, and been willing to step out in faith and follow that. I like the fact you highlighted there that, like listen to the people that the Holy Spirit puts burden on their heart. I think sometimes we get so stuck in our church ministries and our church framework. But actually, maybe God puts burdens on our hearts, and ministries begin to bubble up from that kind of an angle as well. So, maybe for individuals viewing this, where is the Lord putting that burden on your heart? Love that definition of leadership. Looking at the world and going, it doesn't need to be this way. I'm sure we can do something about it. If that's you, then that is God calling you into some area of service and some form of leadership. Powerful. I love that. And then the role of the church, Karyn, what I'm hearing you say is to come along and empower that. Maybe through the team, through the funding, through the supporting of that vision, the training, or whatever else it might be. Yeah, absolutely amazing. And lots of love coming in as well from people saying amen, and a big thank you to Karyn for sharing the vision and the dream and the experience. And so, it's been absolutely wonderful to have you join us this evening. So thank you for your time.
All good. Thanks, Adrian. Thanks so much for having me, and love what you're doing with this segment. So all the best with it. Thank you.
Good. Have a good evening.
Thanks, you too.
Well, I hope that you really enjoyed that from the feedback coming in. I see that you have, and absolutely fantastic to have Karyn with us. I wanted to share in closing just a few thoughts here that we find when we go to the book of Isaiah, chapter 58. Because it is a powerful chapter, and you can see it here on the screen. I'll make that full screen for you, be easier for you to read. And I'm just going to scroll back here to the beginning. So in verse 1, like I said, God really addresses his people, right? It's a religious community, and it says here to the prophet, God talking to the prophet says, "Shout with the voice of a trumpet blast, shout aloud, don't be timid, tell my people Israel of their sins, they act so pious. They come to the temple every day. They seem delighted to learn all about me." So they're into Bible study, right? They're into coming to the house of worship, church attendance, maybe even prayer meetings during the week. They seem delighted to learn about me. They act like a righteous nation that would never abandon the laws of its God. They ask me to take action on their behalf, pretending that they want to be near me. Hey, look at this even, verse 3, religious ceremonies that they go through, right? "We've fasted before you," they say. "Why aren't you impressed? We have been very hard on ourselves, and you don't even notice it." So, I hope that paints a picture for you. This is obviously a group of people. We know Israel. We know that this was sort of the church of the Old Testament on a national level. And so they're deeply devout, they're deeply religious, they've got their rites and their ceremonies. But here's the thing, it wasn't enough for God. God was like, that's not actually what I'm trying to create. I'm not trying to create a group of insular religionists in the world. Yeah, that's my people over there. Look at all the religious stuff they do. All of that, religion is only of value if it actually facilitates a real-time connection with God that transforms the heart. So God answers this situation. He answers the situation in these words. He says, "I will tell you why I'm not responding to your prayers. It's because you're fasting to please yourselves." That's right, we can hijack religion for our own selfish purposes. "While you fast, you keep oppressing your workers. So what good is fasting when you keep on fighting and quarreling? This kind of fasting will never get you anywhere with me. You humble yourselves by going through the motions of penance, bowing your heads like reeds bending in the wind. You dress in burlap, you cover yourselves with ashes. Is this what you call fasting? Do you really think that this will please the Lord? So again, just emphasizing their apparent devoutness, their apparent commitment to their religious convictions, and they go through all the right motions. All of those actions, by the way, were symbolic. We bow our heads in prayer and we kneel because we're making ourselves small before the great God. We're acknowledging his greatness and our smallness. We in their rites and their ceremonies, the sackcloth and the ashes was a symbol of absolute humility and of being in the dust, as it were, before God. Nothing wrong with those things, except if it's not coming from a place of genuine conviction on that subject, like God is just going to look at the outside and go, good on us for being religious, good on us for reading the Bible, good on us for coming to prayer meeting, good on us for... God's going, well, yeah, maybe not so much, because this whole thing was never supposed to be about our works and about our performance, right? It's about real relationship. Salvation is about restoring the relationship with God that has been broken through our sin and through our rebellion. And how does that happen? Well, have a look here, or at least what are the fruits of this? Verse 6. Listen to what God says. This is the kind of fasting that I want, to free those who are wrongly imprisoned. Lighten the burden of those who work for you. Let the oppressed go free. Remove the chains that bind people. Share your food with the hungry. Give shelter to the homeless. Give clothes to those who need them. And do not hide from relatives who need your help. You see, here's how I interpret those things. I interpret those things to simply mean this, that anytime we engage in that kind of community action, we are actually like the disciples in the New Testament, like Jesus himself did. Every time he freed someone from demonic possession, every time he healed someone with a withered hand or a cripple that couldn't walk, he was undoing the effects of sin. He was undoing the suffering. When you engage in the work of alleviating suffering and bringing relief, you might think all that is an earthly act. The reality is you're giving that person an opportunity to experience the life of the kingdom here. God sets us free from brokenness, pain, suffering, and all the rest. And it's a foretaste every time that happens of a kingdom where those things don't exist, of what it was like before sin came into the world. You help someone, through a massage to alleviate a headache or whatever the case may be. You are undoing the effects of brokenness and sin in the world. It may seem small and insignificant to you in that moment, but you're making a difference that declares that this broken world is going to come to an end in an ultimate way someday in the future. We have an effect. We have a way to not only communicate the gospel through words, through promises, through stories of word pictures, etc., but actually demonstrating through action. And this is what the gospel of the kingdom means, what it's going to do for us. So I think it's quite a profound thought. So God says, when this happens, when this kind of transformation happens, here's what will happen. Verse 8, your salvation will come like the dawn. Your wounds will quickly heal. Your godliness will lead you forward. The glory of the Lord, his character, his beauty, right, will protect you from behind. When you call, the Lord will answer. Yes, I am here, he will quickly reply. So remove the heavy yoke of oppression. Stop pointing your finger, spreading vicious rumors. Feed the hungry. Help those in trouble. Your light will shine out from the darkness. The darkness around you will be as bright as noon. The Lord will guide you continually, giving you water when you're dry and restoring your strength. You'll be like a well-watered garden, like an ever-flowing spring. Some of you will rebuild the deserted ruins of your cities, and you will be known as rebuilders of the walls and restorers of homes. Keep the Sabbath day holy. Yep, don't pursue your interests on that day, but enjoy the Sabbath. Speak of it with delight as the Lord's holy day. Honor the Sabbath in everything you do on that day, and don't follow your own desires or talk idly. Then the Lord will be your delight. I will give you great honor and satisfy you with the inheritance I promised to your ancestor Jacob. That, my friends, is Isaiah 58. That is the challenge to you and I, that if we are going to walk with the Lord, let that relationship completely change us and transform us, and let it do that through our church communities. Ask ourselves this hard question, and it is a bit of an uncomfortable question, I've got to tell you as a pastor. Would the community care? if our doors were closed? Would we be missed if our doors were closed? Challenging question. If not, then maybe what we're doing in our church experience, as much as it is good for those who have already found the Lord, maybe it doesn't go far enough in being able to reach into the community in a meaningful way. So I just want to say a huge thank you to Karyn, to the Papatoetoe Church for what they're doing, for any other congregations that are seeking to step out like that, step forward into this adventure of the grace of God to make a difference. Let it start with prayer. Let it start with our own individual challenge. Lord, where do you want me? What is the burden you put on my heart? How can we go forward and break those chains of oppression in our local communities? I don't have all the answers to this. We simply start with the question. We start with the challenge. We ask the Lord for his leading, and we see how the Holy Spirit will open the doors and make way for us to be able to bring the experience of the kingdom forward in time into the here and now for somebody who needs it in that manner. I trust that you've been blessed tonight. I want to thank you so much for all the comments that have come in, for all the thoughts that you've shared. Absolutely appreciate your interactions. Don't forget to like, to share, to subscribe. Why? Because the YouTube algorithm goes, oh, there's something cool happening here. We better serve it up to other people as well. So thank you for tuning in this evening. We will be back here tomorrow evening at 5 o'clock, and I've got a couple that I'm bringing on our Live at 5 show here. Dennis and Leanne Brownie, they are from our local community, and they have an interesting and a powerful ministry of compassion, dealing with children that actually taking them into their homes, children that have been removed from care, children that have had traumatic experiences, and they do an incredible work with these young people. And so we're going to talk to them a little bit about their journey, and we're going to talk to them, ask them to share wisdom with us. You know, some of us are raising children, some of us may have contact with challenging children, and so we're going to ask them to share with us what they've learned over many years of doing this. There are two people with incredible hearts, incredible compassion, and as I've gotten to know them over the years, come to really respect them for their wisdom in this area of how to deal with people who are hurting, especially young people. So tune in again tomorrow evening at 5 p.m. So glad that you could join us tonight. Have an absolutely fantastic evening. God bless.